I stopped by to check it one evening, and because she was having a spotty lawn, and I got down on my hands and knees, and one of the ways to check for chinch bugs is to kind of part the grass so you can see down into the crowns, and then once you have parted it a foot long, you just flat-handedly smack the ground on both sides of the break, and they run across. That's how you can find out. Well, I looked up after doing the third one, and I could see the drapes across the street close quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on. And I put on a show out there for about 15 minutes. All the drapes were opening and closing. But anyhow, aside from the fun, it's an evil. Chinch bugs can literally destroy the lawn. Right now, then, certainly, it is not too late. As a matter of fact, in a way, if you have already fertilized this fall, I would wait another, several weeks to do the second application. Fall is an excellent time to get the crowns and roots and so on of the plants growing. They may show exciting new growth yet this fall. They may not, but they will still be picking up the nutrients, storing them internally, and then ready to dash ahead in the spring. I would say mowing a little lower in case it is a fungal disease. It'll allow the lawn to dry a little quicker if that's the need. I would definitely fertilize. I would not do anything excessive. Whatever the bag says or box or however you use it, do not go overboard. The odds on burning a lawn are pretty remote, but at the same time, I just wouldn't do it. You don't want a flourish of growth and then nothing. You want a good steady feed in the first place. So if it's disease, it's too late to cure it or control it. If it is chinch bugs, they're about done with their chewing for this year, ready to head on down a little bit. You'd want to note that they were there and treat for them next year, and we'll get into that when the time comes. But I believe if he just simply fertilizes, one of the things that might very definitely help in this case, I'm big on the core aeration of a lawn. Now, we used to use an aerator that just tore the daylights out of the lawn in some cases, and not much gain. But the core aeration is a machine driven situation where it's like a belt punch. It's it's a tube that cuts a round circle, goes in the ground up to 2 inches deep, and lifts a core of soil out and drops it on the top. You just leave those pieces lay, but what you're doing is opening up the soil zone so that fertilizer and water can get back down in there and help the roots of the existing plants then grow even more rapidly. The disastrous look in your lawn after the second or third watering or rains, you really don't see what looks like a flock of geese had been there. That brings up images, but
it does. Yeah.
But at the same time, that might help his lawn because it could be just the density of the soil is a problem. So any one of those three things for sure, and maybe all of the above, especially the fertilization and the core aeration, might be of considerable benefit right now.
Now, I have seen people after a core aeration, maybe a couple days after, go out with the spreader and put some seed down. Does that help at all?
Well, yes, it does, Mark. Now, you could put the seed down without having core aerated. But when the cores do break down from water, from aeration and so on, they form what is a minimum depth seed bed. So to seed right after core aeration is wonderful. And as far as fall seeding is concerned, you can seed a lawn, however, without the core aeration. But the people that are doing it, aerating first and then putting the seed down within several days or a week, actually are getting a small advantage of having those cores opened up. So, it's with or without, but I think I will go back to my basic thoughts from years ago. When it comes to fall or any lawn care for that matter, I'd rather see you take a $5 bill and cut the corner up of it that would equal just 50 cents, should that be the case, and spend the first 450 on fertilizer, water, core aeration, that kind of thing, and then the last 50 cents would be on seed. I'm not opposed to seeding a lawn. It does work. But I think when you have a basic lawn, the maintenance of that is probably going to exceed the benefit of seeding into an established lawn. Now, there's all kinds of arguments on that, but that's kind of how I feel about it. I'd rather put $4.50 of that $5 bill into the maintenance of the lawn than to put down just seed. I'm not against seed and seed companies, and for heaven's sakes, buy a good seed. There's a lot of things in the economy, but the more you pay for a pound of bluegrass, the better the bluegrass seed is, the higher the germination, the more it's been cleaned of weed seeds and things. So it's beneficial. So there's no reason not to do that, but I still would use that $5 bill as described.
Now, he says he had spotty growth on a new yard, so if he has bare spots, are those going to fill in if he core aerates, or does he have to seed those areas?
I'm glad you asked, Mark, because I generally allow an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper or the diameter of a basketball or a man's foot or whatever to be a spot that can close with getting the grass that is still alive and well all the way around that, with it sending out tillers and so on. I think you would find it to close itself. Now, that's on a bluegrass lawn. On the turf-type tall fescues, which are wonderful, be sure it's the turf types, not the old roadside stuff. But those are not going to tiller out and spread. So you might want to seed for sure if there are any spots even as big as a basketball in this case. Just literally scratch it up. I have a little tool that's kind of made for that. You can use the steel-tied garden rake, whatever. Chop it up with the hoe. You only have to make a seed bed 1/4 to 1/2 inch deep. Now, the deeper it is, the better it's going to be. But you want to have enough depth that once you've chopped it up, so to speak, you put down the seed and can rake it in 1/8 of an inch at the very most. You're just going to turn the tines of a leaf rake upside down and kind of drag it over that so that the seed is tumbled into the crevices in the soil so that it will maintain water and germinate better.
We had another email this week, Fred at planttalkradio.com. This came from Mark, and he says he missed the show last week because he was driving up the East Coast up in New England looking at the leaves.
Oh, well, now.
Upstate New York.
Makes me envious.
Man, yeah, he says he says it was definitely worth it. I'll bet it was. But he had a question about his Acer palmatum.
Okay.
He calls it Orangiola.
Okay.
And he says that basically this year he's getting some tips of the leaves are looking kind of burned, or, they're scorching or curling up a little bit, and he sent you a picture, and you took a look at that. Yep. And he says that even as the temperatures have cooled, the leaves continue to die back around the edges a bit, and he's wondering about that.
Well, mine looks the same.
Okay.
Now, let me explain that. Mine is not of that cultivar, but first of all, Acer palmatum, since we're using technical names this morning, boils down to being the beautiful little Japanese red maples. Now, there are thin-leafed ones and wide-leafed ones, and I'm not going to get into all the differences because those that collect those plants can have 30 different kinds, 30 different colors and growth habits and so on. But anyhow, in general, those guys, and especially the one he has, which is the thinner leafed or thinner leaf blades, is more apt to dry. And that's actually what I think is happening. I can't tell exactly from that picture, but the patterning on the leaf edges shows that of drying. We had a wet spring. That has its own evils. Then it just turned downright dry again this summer. And if his plant is anywhere near new, it just doesn't have enough root under it to be able to pick up enough water to supply it to all of those fine little tips. They're more prone to drying, period. Now, I have found two things that help with any of the Japanese maples. And that is a mulch, not too deep, 1.5 inches, 2 at the most. I prefer the chunk bark or the larger pieces of shredded wood. That forms a mulched and then sun barrier area as well as drying area. I also have planted some very flat-growing junipers under a Japanese maple on a number of occasions. Grows maybe 2 inches thick or high, and it too avoids the sun baking on the soil as well as the top. So I think it's just drying, and I think he gets off to a better start next year. Soon as it dries up for more than 2 weeks, start a watering every 2 weeks, and he'll have less of that come fall.
And once again, our toll-free number, if you have a question for Fred, 1-866-PLANT-TALK with 2 T's, and that's 1-866-752-6882. More from Fred up next.
This summer at Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens, the gardens are in full color. Walk amidst tropical and native butterflies in flight in the indoor Pacific Island Water Garden. View the conservatory's bonsai collection and experience the exhibition Origami in the Garden. Find details at fpconservatory.org.
And welcome back to the program. Fred Hauer, ready to answer your questions this morning on Plant Talk. And Fred, it's time for the age-old argument about leaf disposal.
Yeah, it is, Mark. And I still have slightly mixed emotions. Now, it has been tried, tested by O.M. Scott and or a subsidiary, as it may be, where they had some young men use mowers. There was a known 4-inch depth of leaves. Now, they were dry leaves, not wet, mucky stuff, and they were on the surface of a grassy area. The mowers, of course, were sharp and running at their regular speed, and these young men mowed this area, I think maybe even crosswise, if I don't remember absolute details. But they literally were chopping the blades of the leaves into multiple small pieces, and then they were also cutting the grass that was blending the brown and the green, so to speak. So it was almost a self-analyzed mulch that would turn into a compost, and it filtered down into the 2.5-inch grass height. When that was done, and they did it several times to find out, it actually showed a slight improvement in the lawn appearance over some nearby area. Now, if it's wet, mucky stuff, and you're chopping it up and slopping it up, so to speak, and it is so wet that it cannot properly decompose and just kind of lay there, that would not be so good. But when you would get into it, and I've practiced this for years, partly because of laziness. I didn't work for Scott's. I was just simply doing the best I could without having to rake. I did put the bagger on for several years and collect this material to put on my compost pile. Because, again, it's that blend of dry browning leaves and grass green and so on. It worked out very, very well. Then I've gotten to where I will sometimes even use the blower, it gets actually 10 or more inches deep when I windrow this, and then I'll run the mower through that, numerous times, being probably 3, back and forth and sideways, whatever, and chop up these leaves. They are also thrown to the side, so it's not all in one spot, and it just keeps me off the handle of the rake. I have fewer blisters on my hands, fewer laments with my back when I'm all done, and it does not seem to hurt the lawn, and to a certain degree, I don't know about the science of it, but the visual aspect would appear to be a benefit to the lawn. So chopping a reasonable amount, and even a reasonable amount each time you mow. Now, if you're starting to pile it up to where it's taller than the pile, that is, or the chips are taller than the grass, that would not be advantageous. But otherwise, I'd say go for it as far as with the mower.
I think the last time Ashton Ritchie was with us, he said that the pieces need to be at least the size of a dime or less.
That's right. A good point. He did say that, and I would totally agree. And to do that, you really need them to be dry when you chop them, or dry-ish.
And, of course, you can also use all of this to start making your pile of black gold, and we'll talk about that coming up next on Plant Talk. Stick with us.
This summer at Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens, the gardens are in full color. Welcome its tropical and native butterflies in flight in the indoor Pacific Island Water Garden. View the conservatory's bonsai collection and experience the exhibition Origami in the Garden. Find details at fpconservatory.org.
You know, if you missed